nothing care, I don't care, everything is okay as it is. But he said that is not healthy neither. He called a modern way of life as a crazy, and the opposition is foolish. So he said we need a middle way between craziness and foolishness. That means we work diligently, and yet we don't lose the peace of mind. Is there such attitude or such way of life possible or not? I think it's a very important question for all of us, not as a Buddhist necessarily. All of us who live in the modern society. And Okumura Roshi discussed that one of the essential points of Buddhist teaching, that is the middle way. And the middle way is discussed in Buddha's teachings and also in Mahayana traditions as a middle way between Wu and Mu. Wu is being or existence, and Mu is non-being or negation of being. And we have certain idea, everything existence or nothing existence. So we want to, how can I say, define things and separate things clearly. What is there as existence and what it does not existence. But Buddha said, as a middle way, there's no either view of Wu and view of Mu are not the reality itself. Forms, nothing added from the moment of Big Bang until today. Nothing added from the outside of the universe, and nothing is taken out. In that sense, all of us have been existing from that moment of Big Bang, not as a form of Shōhaku, but nothing is taken out and nothing is added. Everything is kind of a changing of the forms of energy. So even when we are born, nothing is added. And even when we die, nothing is taken away. That is what is said in the Heart Sutra, no arising and no perishing. So when we see this as an individual being, there is Wu and Mu, arising and perishing, or being born and dying. But so there are two ways of viewing things. One is if we think this bubble is independent things, then it appear and disappear. But when we see a bubble is simply a condition of air packed in the water, nothing is added and nothing is reduced. And seeing emptiness is seeing this way without a fixed individual entity. Things as a process of changing. Anyway, that is how middle way, or Chudo, means. Chudo means we see our life from both ways, or neither way. That is what Okumura Roshi said in the end of last section as a conclusion of his discussion about middle way. In the last paragraph of page 101, Okumura Roshi said, therefore, the middle way in Buddhism does not mean taking some in-between position. In-between means this and this, something between wu and mu. In between position that has been conjured up in our heads. So this is not our concept. Nor acting in compromising way. When there are two different opinions, we try to find the point both can be, how can I say, completely negated. That is compromising way in our actual life. But he said that is not the middle way. Rather, despite the fact that we latch on to our ideas of being or non-being, taking the middle way. So this middle way is being free from our idea, our thinking, whether wu or mu. So taking the middle way means to demolish all concepts set up in our minds and without fixing on reality as any particular thing, to open the hand of thought. So he said, to live in the middle way, or to live based on the middle way, is to open the hand of thought. That means we don't grasp any way about ourselves and about the things around us without using our thinking or concept. And he said, allowing life to be life. Life to be life means we don't try to grasp it. We don't try to define it. We don't try to being caught up in our idea about our life or about things around us. So that is the conclusion of Okumura Roshi's discussion about middle way. And at the end of last Sunday talk, I introduced introduction verse from Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika. This is a very basic text about the Mahayana teaching of emptiness, and Madhyamika means middle. So Nagarjuna's basic discussion is what is the middle way. And Nagarjuna said in the very beginning of this text, I pay homage to the free awakened one. That means Shakyamuni Buddha, the supreme teacher who has taught the doctrine of relational origination. Relational origination is another translation of interconnected origination. The blissful cessation of all phenomenal thought. All phenomenal thought constructions. So blissful cessation of all phenomenal thought constructions. Therein, every event is marked by non-origination, non-extinction. Non-origination means no arising and no perishing. Non-destruction, non-permanence. Non-identity, non-differentiation. Non-coming into being, non-going out of being. This is, according to Nagarjuna, this is the essence of Buddha's teaching about the middle way. And this was cessation of all phenomenal thought construction. In Sanskrit, this expression, phenomenal thought construction, is Propancha. And Chinese translation of this Sanskrit word is Keron. Keron is often translated into English as idle discussion. This K means like playing, kids playing with something, and kids enjoy it. But it's nothing to do with the reality. So this idle discussion means it has nothing to do with the reality. It's there, and we enjoy it. It's funny. Not funny, but it's interesting. But it's not really touch the real reality. And according to Nagarjuna, all thinking is Propancha. It's not matter, some of our thinking is based on reality, and the other part of our discussion is idle discussion. But all our thinking is idle discussion. Everything produced in our mind is not real thing. It's a fiction. And Propancha is, in Madhyamika teachings, Propancha is caused by vikalpa. Vikalpa, Chinese translation of vikalpa, I really don't understand the Sanskrit, original Sanskrit word. So my understanding of these terms is through Chinese translation. So there might be some difference between real original meaning in Sanskrit. But that is my limitation. Anyway, vikalpa is translated into Chinese as komo fumbes. Ko means void or empty, and mo is false. And fum and betsu both mean separation or discrimination. So void and false or fictitious discrimination. So basically, vikalpa is discrimination. And some English translation of Propancha is conceptualization. So we make discriminate things within our mind. When we encounter with some things, we make discrimination. This is good, this is not good. And then we conceptualize this. I often use this thing. We call this a black marker. And now it can be used, it is useful to me to write something on the whiteboard. So I define this as a black marker because this is useful to write something, and I need to write something. So this has some value to me. That is how we discriminate and conceptualize. And when we do discriminate and conceptualization, we think that is real thing. So once we think this is meaningful and valuable to me, I always want to keep this with me, and I want to make this my position. So if someone else wants to use this or take this away from me, I become angry, or I need to fight against that person. That is how our life is going. But Fat Buddha told when he used this expression, middle way, is seeing this not really a black marker. This is a black marker only within the relation between this person and this thing. And this is a black marker only certain period of time. When this was manufactured at the factory, it became a black marker. And as far as I use this as for writing, this continued to be a black marker. But once the ink is dried up, then we change the name and the concept of what this is. We name this trash and put this into the trash can. So this is not really a black marker. Black marker is same as the bubble. Only certain period of time for certain people, like me. I can use this as a marker, but for, I think I said the same thing last time, but for a cat, this is not a black marker at all. Or, I made the sand garden behind the building. Cat and human beings are different. I think that is an expression of my sense of beauty. But for many cats, that is a huge, vast, boundless. So when I clean up the garden, I found, cat waste. So it's not, is it a sand garden or cat toilet or public restroom? Which is true. Those are both kind of a production of a mind. So actual thing in the garden and the actual thing as this is not really a black marker. This is only within relation between me and this thing. Then we create the name and definition concept, and we make judgment whether this is meaningful or valuable. And that is okay. I mean, that works in the human society, human community, because most of human beings have a kind of agreement. This is a black marker, and this has some value as far as it is useful. But that's all. That's all it means. That is a kind of a fiction valid only within human society. That is not the real thing. Before our thinking, before in the Okumura Roshi expression, as a raw reality. Raw means before being cooked or processed within our mind. So as a raw reality, this is not a black marker and this is not a reading glass. Well, that is what Okumura Roshi is thinking, and not only Okumura Roshi, but Shakyamuni, Nagarjuna, and Dogen, and Okumura Roshi are thinking about the middle way as a reality of our life. So there are two kind of layers of reality. One on the surface, there is a way we think and value and treat based on our discrimination and conceptualization and evaluation. But in a deeper layer of our life, there's no such things done with our mind cannot reach. These are two layers of our life. And when Okumura Roshi says in this paragraph about Zazen, the Zazen taught in Zen Buddhism is the actualization of the middle way. Actualization is not really, I think, exact translation. The original Japanese word Okumura Roshi used is jisen. Suru. Jisen can be noun, and suru, when we put this word suru in any noun, it becomes verb. You know, Japanese is a kind of strange or interesting language. You know, almost all nouns can be used as a verb when we put this suru. For example, make a phone call is denwa suru, and denwa means telephone. So do telephone is making a phone call. So do jisen is what Okumura said, and this jit means true, real, or actual. And sen is action, do. So actually do it. So actualization is not a mistranslation, but actualization is a noun. But what he said is about do. So actually do the middle way, or actually practice the middle way. That is the kind of difference between the Buddha's, Nagarjuna's teaching about middle way. He said middle way is being free from any phenomenal thought, mind construction. That is a theory, that is a philosophy. That is what they taught. And in the case of Zazen, according to Okumura Roshi, we actually do it. And this is, to me, or in Zen, this difference is really important. And to me, this is like reading a map or reading a travel guide and actually walking, actually traveling. You know, we can read a travel guide without leaving my room, and we may accumulate many knowledge about the places. And as a knowledge, it might be true, it might be correct. But the collection or structure of the knowledge, building of the knowledge, and actually traveling is two different things. So when we read Buddha's teaching or Nagarjuna's teaching or Dogen's teaching, those are not easy things. So we have to make effort to understand what they are talking about. And after studying, often using commentaries and dictionaries, we start to understand, or their teachings start to make sense to me. And we feel, now I understand what they are talking about. But even the thinking is not reality, it's still a thinking. So we need to become free from our thinking. That is still thinking. We have to jump. As a Zen practitioner, or practice Zazen means jump into the real thing, or we get out of our room and start to walk. That is the difference. And when Okumura said the actualization, or to practice the middle way is to really walk on the path, not thinking about the middle way. As a thinking, it might be correct, or it might be misunderstanding. But when we are walking and knowing is different. So when we practice Zazen, we are actually doing the middle way instead of thinking about or understanding about the middle way. That is a difference. So the Zazen taught in Zen Buddhism is the actualization, or to practice the middle way. That is a very quick of life. Does quick of life make sense? Quick.
Yes, true, quick, yeah.
Quick of life. The life itself. The life itself. The vitality itself. It's not a thinking or understanding or concept of the life, but actual living energy without being processed within our mind. That is life as interdependence. As Buddha and Nagarjuna said, this teaching, Buddha's teaching of interdependence, or engi, is the reality we cannot grasp using any concept. And the reality which cannot be grasped with any concept or discrimination is called emptiness. But when we are thinking, emptiness is still concept. We really become empty. In the Heart Sutra, in the very beginning of the Heart Sutra, it said, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when deeply practicing prajna paramita, clearly see that all five aggregates are empty and thus relieve all suffering. In this case, Avalokiteshvara is practicing. So prajna, or with prajna, is wisdom. Wisdom that sees emptiness. But if this, we usually think when we read that sentence in the Heart Sutra, we say what we think, because that is any sentence is a collection of concepts. So we automatically think here is a person whose name is Avalokiteshvara, and Avalokiteshvara is practicing, doing some activity. Then there is an object named five skandhas, five aggregates. And Avalokiteshvara sees the emptiness of five skandhas as using wisdom or prajna as a kind of a tool. That means wisdom, in this case, wisdom is like a reading glass. I cannot read this book without reading glass, but when I put reading glass, then I can read it. So wisdom is like a reading glass. When we don't have wisdom, we cannot see the emptiness of five skandhas. But with the help or aid of prajna, then we can see, or Avalokiteshvara could see the true reality of five skandhas. That means emptiness. That is, I think, how we understand this sentence. And as a sentence or language, that is correct understanding. But if we interpret this first sentence of the Heart Sutra in this way, we completely miss the point of what the person or the people who made the Heart Sutra. That means both prajna or wisdom or emptiness means there's no such separation between subject and object. So even though we read the sentence that really is saying so, but by reading that sentence, we should understand, even though as a sentence it says subject, object, and tool, but the idea, not idea, but reality of emptiness means there's no such separation between subject and object. Five skandhas are all there is. There's no such person outside the five skandhas. That is a very basic teaching of Shakyamuni. So this means this Avalokiteshvara is five skandhas. And so five skandhas cannot see five skandhas. Because one thing cannot be separated into two sides as subject and object. But we do. During our Zazen, the person sitting becomes subject, and all different thoughts coming and going become object, and we start to interact. That is what we do, and yet that is what we should stop when we open our hand or letting go in our Zazen. Then subject and object are the same thing. So there's no such activity to see. That means there's no seer and nothing seen. This is simply one thing. One thing, and within five skandhas there are many things happening, but there's no observer as Avalokiteshvara. Then, five skandhas simply being five skandhas. And that is what we do, not what we do. That is a problem. It's not we do, but that is happening in our Zazen. There's no Shōhaku, and no thinking coming and going within Shōhaku's mind. But five skandhas is just being five skandhas and working. There's no owner of five skandhas. That is just five skandhas being five skandhas, and that's all. And in order to explain or express this thing happening in our Zazen, the Heart Sutra must say, Avalokiteshvara see the emptiness of five skandhas. This is a kind of a limitation of communication using language and concept. So even those Buddhist sutras is still happening within this area. Discrimination and conceptualization and evaluation. And when we stop all doing those things and just sitting facing the wall. This is simply one thing. Five skandhas are simply five skandhas. And even when we don't think, five skandhas are empty. It's empty. So that is the reality before we think this is the reality. So what we do in our Zazen is just being, let five skandhas be five skandhas. That is the time five skandhas reveals its emptiness. Or five skandhas are from the beginning empty. So we don't need to make it empty. So when we cease all those mental activity and just sit, it's happening. It's emptiness of five skandhas are really there. So this kind of very subtle and yet radical difference between thinking and understanding about emptiness of five skandhas, and just let five skandhas being simply five skandhas. That means we don't interrupt anything, and we don't control anything. What we do is really just sitting, facing the wall. Then this zazen, according to Dogen, this zazen is itself Avalokiteshvara. And this zazen is itself prajna. And when we refrain from processing and cooking all things and interpreting and making evaluation, then that is how our life become our life. Not become, but our life being our life. Five skandhas simply being five skandhas. And that is Avalokiteshvara, and that is prajna. When we are sitting, we are actually doing or practicing the middle way. To me, this is a really important point in our practice of Zazen. So our Zazen practice, even though we call this Zen meditation, we don't meditate. In the case of meditation, there is a subject who is meditate, and a kind of a object of meditation. So there's a separation between a person who practices meditation and the topic to be meditated. And in our Zazen, there's no such object of meditation. So the word meditation is not really right word, but it's a common thing. So I also say, this is Zen meditation. But within Zen meditation, there's nothing to be meditated. So this is interesting thing. Anyway, and yet this is a really important point. And this is the reason why Dogen and we call this is shikantaza, or just sitting. Because we do nothing but sitting. And sitting is done with five skandhas. So the person who is sitting is not really a Shōhaku. Until I start, I come down to the zendo and sit on the cushion. That is my activity. Even though I didn't want to come down to sit, somehow I wake up at 4:30 and come down at 5. Even when I don't want to. But that is my action, my determination. So that is Shōhaku's activity. But once I sit down and sitting facing the wall and letting go of thought, this is not done by Shōhaku. In this case, Shōhaku kind of disappeared. And these five skandhas, called Shōhaku usually, is sitting. So our sitting is like a flame of candle. It's simply burning. If there's something above it, then the flame burns this thing. And depending on what is this action can be good or bad, or harmful or not harmful. A flame of a candle can burn the house. Then we think it's not good. But there's no, when we light incense with the flame of the candle, we think that is a good thing. It's useful. So depending on what is this thing that candle can burn, this activity of the flame can be good or bad within our system of value. But when nothing is there, the flame is just burning. there's nothing neither good nor bad. And our zazen is same as the flame of a candle just burning. So there's no way to evaluate whether this is good or bad. Just being, just burning. In our case, just burning our life force. So our zazen is something very strange, or at least unique. It's different from other activities. In almost all other activities in our life, I think and I make choice which is good or not good, which is meaningful or valuable more than others. Then we make decision and do it. So it's based on my judgment. And my judgment is based on my conceptualization and discrimination. But this zazen is not based on this kind of thing. And this kind of thing is based on our karma. How we make discrimination, how we make discrimination, and how we conceptualize it, define it, and how we evaluate are based on our karma. That means where we are born, how we are raised, what kind of education we received, our way of making discrimination, conceptualization, and judgment are different. But when we just burn our life force, we are all human beings or living beings, whether human beings or the cat or snakes. We are all living the life. That's all. On that is, I think, the common ground of all living beings. But when we start to think, our thinking is different from other peoples or other living beings. So to me, this practice of just sitting is really something unique. If we can say because it's unique, it's variable, then it's still value judgment. We already start to the world of thinking. Because I'm a Buddhist or a Soto Zen Buddhist, practitioner, I think this is a meaningful and valuable, and even more, we think this is superior to other kind of meditation. But that is too much already. So, but important thing is just sitting without making such comparison with other kind of style of practice. Well, this is what I have to say this morning. It's already 11:05. Any question or comments? Please.
Is the Pali word for Propancha, Pancha, Propancha, the Pali?
I am not sure. I'm sorry. Propancha is Sanskrit.
Yeah.
I don't remember the Pali word. Does someone know?
I think it probably is the same.
Yeah.
Same?
Then remember getting up at 4:30, not wanting to come down to practice meditation, and actually coming down the stairs, and this is what you practice. And you were saying that this is Hojo-san's practice, or this is Hojo-san's decision, and
or duty as a abbot of this temple.
Okay, or duty.
Even if when I don't want to, I have to do it.
It would seem to me, at the same time, it's just the 5 skandhas doing.
Yeah, that this is also a function of 5 skandhas.
Yeah, yeah.
So we don't. we don't need to negate or eliminate them, but to see this is a fictitious is important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are caught up in what we grasp, and this is my value judgment is absolutely right.
Yes.
Whoever against me is wrong or bad or demons.
Yeah. So it would seem to me that you just described one of the advantages, the results, the positive results of doing Zazen.
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you. Please.
When Dogen talked about just sitting, do you think he was distinguishing Zen practice from other forms of meditation like Vipassana, where you sort of consciously consider that elements of your physical and mental experience are impermanent and therefore there is no self?
Because he originally ordained as a Tendai monk, and in the Tendai tradition, Tendai school, the practice of Shikan is their meditation practice, and she is shamatha and kind vipassana. So Dogen never studied Pali or Theravada Buddhism, but he was very familiar with this practice of shamatha and vipassana practice, and he left that tradition and started to practice Zen. And first he practiced so-called Rinzai Zen for 7 years or so, 7 plus 2, 9, 8 or 9 years, and he left that practice also. And finally he met this Soto Zen teacher, and he started practice, Soto Zen meditation or Zen practice. So he was familiar with, various different style of meditation practice. Okay. Please.
I have a practical question about Zazen. So, I think my Zazen is very bad. Because
it's already value judgment.
Because oftentimes when I'm sitting, I have pain, and that makes me observe my own sitting. So I am separating into a subject and an object. So I'm looking at my own Zazen and saying, oh, your posture is bad, you need to move around a little bit or something, or straighten up. And so, at least for me, I don't know about other people, but for me, it's very hard to maintain the feeling that I'm not really here, that I'm just 5 skandhas, burning like a candle. That I find very difficult. So, do you have any advice for me about that?
Well, if we think that is a bad Zazen, and really being 5 skandhas, simply being 5 skandhas is good Zazen, then we already made some discrimination and conceptualization.
Yeah.
So how can we stop that?
Right.
Even evaluation. And what Uchamura said is, even though thinking is not Zazen and sleeping is not Zazen, struggling about pain is not Zazen. But he said, we often sleep and we often think. And what Uchamura said is, when we are aware that we are thinking, we stop it and return to just sitting. And when we are sleepy and sleeping, we wake up and return to just sitting. So this returning is more important than make value judgment my zazen is bad, so I have to do a better zazen. If we are doing that, we are kind of getting far away from what we're supposed to do.
I see. So
Whenever we find that we are thinking or sleeping or our posture is not good enough, we just return to just sitting. It's silently returning, according to Roshi, is the most important point of our practice. And he said we should do this billions of times. That means almost moment by moment. So there's no bad zazen.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
Believe?
Thank you.
That means there's no good zazen. Zazen is simply zazen. Please.
I have concerns about the bubble, the marker, and the cat. It seems to me that the bubble comes about as a certain set of conditions. There has to be the oxygen that's trapped within the framework of the water to make the bubble. The marker, as you have indicated, has a meaning to you that it does not have the cat. Your garden has a meaning to you that it doesn't have the cat. The bubble, as far as I know, and as far as I think we all know, has no consciousness.
But it has no consciousness, right?
The marker has no consciousness. You have a consciousness of the garden, and the cat has a different consciousness of the garden.
Probably.
Probably. And I have still yet another concept of the garden. So the issue, it seems to me, is what constitutes a sentient being, and whether or not a sentient being is something more than the 5 standards.
5 skandhas, 5 aggregates?
Yes, 5 aggregates. And the reason that I wonder about that is that it seems to me that the space between being and non-being doesn't necessarily preclude, as a condition for being, the same kinds of conditions that create a bubble. And therefore, that condition that pre-exists, being as we understand it, might very well be consciousness. Because there's something that's happening in that spectrum that makes us have the mental construct that the marker doesn't have. And so it still seems to me that there has to be something more to the 5 standards than just what the aggregates. I'm sorry, I don't get my words exactly right, but I'm trying to get the concept right. It seems to me that we have missed something, and I don't know what we've missed.
5 skandhas include our body and mind, function of our mind.
But does the mind, does any aspect of the mind pre-exist here's the tension as I see it. Buddha teaches that there is reincarnation. He constantly is talking, I mean, the story that we all know is he's occupying a hut that is not, it's either spinning or making pottery or something, I don't remember, and there's somebody else in the hut that is also seeking a way to honor his parents through veneration. And Buddha says, no, that's not the right way to do it, sends him out to do some purification stuff, and he dies. And so Buddha says, well, he already had latched onto the truth and he'll be better in his next life. And so I come back to those examples of reincarnation, and in effect, the total termination of consciousness with the expiration of the 5 standards. I cannot reconcile them in my mind.
Me neither. If there is only 5 skandhas are there, then what continues? From past life to present life, and present life
The
to
thought continues.
next life. What continues? What is that
Oh,
thing?
what continues, not thought continues.
What is this thing that continues from
That-
past life to present life to a future life? And I really don't understand.
It's driving me crazy, which is really not a very far trip.
In my case, I'm okay with that.
You're okay with me having a short trip? No, that's
not many Buddhist masters or philosophers try to reconcile or make it understandable how selfless self can continue to be born and reborn next lifetime. What is that thing that continues? Even and Buddha said there's no such thing called Atman or soul. Then how is it possible? And I think many teachers try to explain how such a thing possible, but at least to me, all of those explanations doesn't make sense. So actually, as a Japanese Buddhist, I don't care so much. Actually, in Japanese, as a Japanese, we have different idea about our life or our afterlife. Reincarnation is Indian views, and until we accept Buddhism, we have no such idea. In Japan, we think when people die, they go to the realm of dead, and often the realm of the dead is in the mountains or beyond the ocean, and they come back. Once, twice, at least twice or three times a year. Both equinox and one in the summertime called Obon. So this is a completely different idea about the idea of afterlife, after death. But somehow Japanese Buddhists accept both. When you visit Japanese Buddhist temples, you can see the Dharma names, the plate of Dharma names of our ancestors. When we see the incarnation from Indian view, this doesn't make sense at all, because after 49 days, our ancestor becomes something else. So this is simply empty names on the udon, plate. But all Japanese Buddhists come to the temple at least 3 times a year and may, worship. And they have no question about this practice. And they also never negate Indian idea of reincarnation. Logical person cannot accept these two things. And I'm pretty logical person, but still, it's okay. So I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I don't have an answer to your question. Rather, I have the same question.